Hello there, my lovely, and welcome to another episode of our Coaching Corner here on YouTube. Now, today's conversation, we're going to be talking about why you keep starting over. Why you keep starting over, why you always come to a Monday saying this week is going to be different, why you always come to the first of a month, this month is going to be the month, why you always come to the first of a year saying this year is going to be different, and ultimately things are never different. And I'm going to share with you how women who rise actually break that cycle. The women who actually rise are able to move beyond some of their self-imposed limits, how they break that cycle. My name is Sabrina Militello. I am a coach and founder of Empower Her Coaching, and I am here just to give you some very straightforward conversation, some tough love as I'm known to give, but like I always say, I don't think it's tough love at all. It's just love, because I'm not here to watch you continue to struggle, especially because I profoundly believe that you are wildly capable. You are wildly capable of everything that you want your life to be. And my intention is that these conversations we have on a weekly basis here start to implant that seed in you so that you start to believe that you are wildly capable and you start to go after everything it is that you want your life to be. All right. So why do you keep starting over? Maybe we start with that question. What is it? If you can look back on the last time that you delayed or procrastinated or quit, gave up on something that you said that you really wanted, what was the reasoning behind that? Can you just have an honest self-assessment moment and just say, why did I do that? Why did I delay? Why did I procrastinate? Why did I quit on that thing? What was it that made you take that action? Because one of my mentors, Brendan Burchard, he always says that the only way that human beings change their lives is underneath two scenarios. One, something comes from the outside and forces a change, or two, something comes from within and creates a change. Something comes from the outside and forces a change. Something comes from within and creates a change. And I'm going to give you two examples of what I mean by that, or what I interpret that he means by that. So I had a time in my life, it's coming on 10 years ago, which is insane that this was a decade ago. I feel like I've grown so much since then, but in a lot of ways because of what I'm about to share with you. So I co-owned a boutique fitness studio. I had my own personal training business at that time as well. But really with the studio, I had a business partner and we were building this business. We were looking at expanding to a second location. Things seemed to be going really well. We worked together really well. Yes, there was personality friction that we had, but in terms of the business, we seemed to operate different parts of the business really well. So it worked, right? And things were going well. Our revenue was increasing. We were doing all the things. We were having really strong, solid relationships in our communities. And then one day I had gone on vacation. I'd come back and it was like she had seen what could be possible in terms of revenue when she didn't have to share that revenue. And I'm being very kind of critical in my view. And maybe this wasn't the case at all, but this is how I read it. And so she decided that she didn't need me anymore. And it was her business that she had brought me into for the specific purpose of helping her grow and expand in the ways that we were going, right? I'd been there for 4 years, had given blood, sweat, and tears. My health was not great because of how much physically I was giving to the business. My marriage was suffering because of how much mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it I was giving to the business. And she basically pushed me out of the business, right? So that was an example of something from the outside forcing change in my life. Because of that thing that happened, I was forced to take a look at my relationship, how I was showing up as a wife, why it was breaking. I was forced to look at my health, what I was doing that was causing a collapse in that area. I was forced to look at a lot of the things that I was doing that was making my life not go the way that I wanted to, but because something had come from the outside to force change. Can you see that? Another example of where something changed from the inside and created something different. I feel like I've changed so much in my life, and maybe you can recognize this in yourself too, especially in the past 18 months. I would say the past 18 months have been formative in this new era of my life, professionally, personally, in my marriage, the connection that my husband and I have in this season of our relationship. We've been married 17 years, together for 27 years. And it's unlike any other time in our relationship. My health is in a place where it's unlike it's ever been before. My relationship with myself has dramatically changed. Where I find myself in my career is not where I expected to be. And so how the things shifted on the inside that created this massive change in my life was that focus, that singular focus on the woman that I'm becoming. I decided one day that I was no longer going to allow how other people felt about me to dictate how I felt about me. I was no longer going to allow the way that I saw myself to be predicated on out there, right? What people said about me on social media, what people said about me in friendship circles, what people said about me in my career, what people said about me anywhere. I decided that I knew the truth of who I was, that I knew where I needed to heal. I knew where my fractured pieces needed to be put back together. I knew where I excelled and where to double down on those things. I knew that. And I decided that me moving forward was only going to be fueled by that, right? And so I doubled down on my healing practices, doubled down on becoming the woman that I could be really proud of. And I get emotional when I think about that, because I read something recently, I think it was a viral thing on social media, and it said, if you are the woman that your 5-year-old self would go to for protection, you did the damn thing. And I can proudly stand in the truth of that for myself. And so those are two examples of the truth of Brendon Burchard's work, right? Two reasons why you will change. One, something comes from the outside and forces change, or two, something comes from within and creates the change. So the question I have for you on this topic of why you keep starting over and how to break that cycle, how to become one of those women who rises and is able to break that cycle, is what is it that forces the delay or the procrastination or the quitting when you have done it in the past? Is it something from the outside coming in, or is it something from the inside coming out? I think it's really important to identify that. Right? And then I have 3 talking points. I've been talking in threes recently in these coaching sessions. I think it's got a good rhythm and a good kind of, it sets a good pace for our conversations, but I would love your feedback on that. Let me know if you're sick of threes or you want me to kind of create any other kind of coaching framework or whatever for you. I have got some frameworks coming up in my content over the next couple of sessions that I've already kind of noodled on, but I wanted to bring you these 3 kind of areas that we're gonna drill down this conversation in, now that you've got some context and hopefully you've been able to identify one of those 2 forces that have been at play for you. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is identity versus behavior. The second thing we're going to talk about is self-trust and how that kind of manifests in a loop. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is your decision-making process. So starting with identity versus behavior. I am somebody who believes that your identity shapes your behavior, but also that your behaviors shape your identity. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So what I mean by identity versus behavior, when you're thinking about it from this point of why you keep starting over, most people wait for motivation, right? Most people wait to feel like it before they do the thing. The women who rise, the women who I work with, what has been true for me in my journey, and then my observations of successful women in their fields, is that these women don't wait for motivation. They don't allow their emotions to be in the driver's seat, right? They decide who they are and then they act like it. Let me say that again. These women who have found success, whatever you deem success, they decide who they are and then they act like it. So their identity directs their behavior. Their identity directs their behavior in the positive route of where it is they want their life to go ultimately, right? So they don't wait for motivation. They don't wait to if they feel like it, because we all have days where, showing up for our job, showing up in our best energy is the last thing we feel like doing. But the women who succeed are the ones who show up and do it anyway, regardless of how they feel, because who they are is directing their behavior in the positive way. But can you also see how having knowledge or an understanding of who you are can direct your behavior in the negative direction? If you are somebody who so badly wants to, let me take health for an example. You so badly want to get off your blood pressure medication. You so badly want to get off your diabetes medication. Maybe you have 50 pounds that you want to lose in order to facilitate that drug reduction, right? But you don't believe yourself to be somebody who is capable of doing that. Maybe how you identify is, I am a woman who has always struggled with emotional eating. I am a woman who has always struggled with just needing more food. And when I have a taste of something, I can't stop. I have to continue. I'm somebody who does not have willpower, right? That's how you identify. And so your behaviors are directed by that identity. You believe yourself to be somebody who is under the control of food or your emotions in relation to food. And so your behaviors are dictated by that. You binge eat, you emotionally eat, you start your new diet on Monday, and then by Wednesday you're having pizza and wine. You always give into cravings, you always give into whatever comes along that takes you off that route, because at the end of the day, who you believe yourself to be is somebody who is under the control of food. So the identity piece is the piece, right? Because if you identify as somebody who's underneath the control of food, your behaviors mirror that. Whereas if you identified as somebody who cares deeply about my health, and I'm somebody who does not abuse my body with food, I'm somebody who exerts control over my choices, your behaviors will mirror that too, won't they? So it's not that your behaviors are the foundational piece, your identity is. Can you agree with that? I hear people say the opposite of that so much. They give so much power to the behavior. I can't say no to binge eating. I always give in to my cravings. When I have my period, then it's game over. Like, we give power to the behavior. Whereas if we truly understand that it's the identity that is the foundation for the behavior, then it becomes very obvious where our efforts need to be focused, right? They need to be focused on who we believe ourselves to be, not on fixing the behavior. And this is one of the issues that we're seeing with the prevalence of GLP-1 medications and weight loss drugs and weight loss interventions that only focus on the behavior, not on the identity piece. That's why with shows such as Biggest Loser, where they only focused on the behavior, working out, eating, that was all they focused on in that boot camp kind of experience, never on the individual, the mindset, the identity. People lost extraordinary amounts of weight and then went home, went back to their normal lives, went back to being with who they are, and the weight inevitably returned because the identity was not taken into account. So when you think about why you keep starting over and how to break that cycle that you seem to find yourself in, your identity is the foundational piece of that equation. Agreed? All right, so identity work. Anthony Trucks does a ton of work on identity. You can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can take some courses, you can self-assess. There's so many ways in which you can reach into the identity portion of this journey to start to fiddle with it. I do a lot of work with my one-on-one coaching clients on identity, my Inevitable Woman coaching experience. It's a 12-week one-on-one private coaching experience, that I take my clients through that is predominantly identity-based work to help them rise and elevate into the next level of their lives. So reach out to me if that's something that you want to talk about, us working together in that piece specifically, or go and do your own research, seek thought leaders in this area and start to get familiar with and get a handle on and a grasp on the importance of identity work, how to go about shifting who you believe yourself to be, and the repetitive nature of that work, because it is incredibly repetitive. And when I say that, I listened to the same book the entire 2024, every day that I went for my walk, 2024, every single day. I walk Monday to Friday, 3 miles. I listened to the same book. I think I listened to this book upwards of 8 or 9 times through 2024. So it's repetitive, and you have to be okay with that. I am about to be 44 years old. Remember what I said, that the majority of my shift has happened in the last 18 months. I had 42 and a half years worth of work to undo, right? So don't get discouraged because it feels so big, because the shift can happen very quickly if you're committed to the process. All right, so that's identity versus behavior in this conversation of why we keep starting over and how to break that cycle. The second piece that I wanted to talk about very quickly, because we've talked about this a lot, is the self-trust loop. The reason why, through my observations, the reason why so many women quit on their goals or delay them or procrastinate on them or sabotage them even, is that they don't trust themselves to follow through on the full process, right? They don't trust themselves to keep going when it gets hard. They don't trust themselves to overcome the obstacle. They don't trust themselves to be able to navigate the troublesome moments and the setbacks, or they don't trust themselves to hold the success when they get it. So the thing that I want you to understand is that self-trust and building trust in yourself is a fundamental part of that identity foundation. It is. Remember I said to you that the thing that came from within for me that created the change outside in my life was that singular dedication to the woman that I was becoming and the growth that I needed to experience there. Remember I talked about my relationship with myself was a huge point of focus. That relationship with myself piece, it was self-like. I didn't like myself at all. And then self-trust was the secondary part of that. I didn't trust myself because for so long, and this was something that solidified through my weight loss process. If you don't know my story, I've lost over 100 pounds and been able to keep that off now for a vast number of years. But that process has been hard, and I lost the original 100 pounds and then regained about 35 of those 100, and then had to go through the process of losing that, and then the yo-yo of on off, like a few pounds here and there, and now being able to maintain my weight in a really healthy way. All of that, like the process of back and forth, I diminished my self-trust through that, right? Like saying that I was going to work on this thing and I was going to stop eating in this way and I was going to stop behaving in this way and I was going to say no to X, Y, and Z thing. And then every time that I didn't follow through on that, I didn't do that, I was eroding my self-trust. And so through, gosh, I want to say like 20 years of my process of my health and my weight, my self-trust was being beaten down until I got to the end of that cycle. Yes, at the desired weight, but a very diminished sense of self-worth. And I had to rebuild that by regaining trust in myself. And a big piece of that was starting to keep the promises that I made to myself. How are you not keeping the promises that you make to yourself? Where is it that you say that you're going to do one thing for you and then you go and do the exact opposite, or you do something different? Because we talk about this a lot, how we are the ones who everybody else can rely on, right? If you say you're going to do something for somebody else, counted, it's done. Tick, tick, tick before you've even done it, because you're so reliable and everyone knows that about you. But when it comes to what you need to do for yourself and your health, your career, your finances, your relationships, boundaries that you need to set, a quality of life that you want to enjoy, you don't show up. Why? What is that? I can almost guarantee that there's an element of your relationship with yourself, i.e. how you regard yourself, because that's what a relationship is built on, that is fractured, broken perhaps, not where you want it to be. So when we talk about the self-trust loop, what I'm talking about is that you make a promise, you don't follow through, you feel badly about yourself because of that, and so it makes it harder to follow through on the promise the next time. It's this self kind of fulfilling prophecy almost of you continuing to be in bad integrity with yourself. So think about that piece of this equation for yourself. Where is it that I don't keep the promises that I make to myself? Where is it that I don't follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do for myself, and why? How is that connected to the identity piece that we just explored? Start to see and pick out where these things are interconnected, where they're related, where they're linked. Because when we break, in order to break the cycle, you have to figure out where all of these pieces are connected, especially when the behaviors are not in the direction of where you want them to go. How am I reinforcing all of this bad behavior, quote unquote, by all of these pieces that I don't realize are linked simply because I refuse to look at them? I said this to my client community at the beginning of this week. We started a new challenge in my health coaching community. And the first directive I gave them was to self-audit. And the question was, you cannot change what you refuse to look at. You cannot change what you refuse to look at. So where is it that you're refusing to look at, where you're out of integrity with yourself, where you don't keep the promises you make to yourself, where you promise and over-deliver in all the other areas of your life, but when it comes to the things for you, you phone it in or you don't show up at all? Where does that come from? Why are you making that okay in your life, in your psyche? And how is that? How can you see that that's related to that identity foundation? Okay, so that's the identity versus behavior piece. That's the self-trust part of the equation, how those two could potentially be correlated. And then the third part of why you keep starting over and how you can break that cycle is your decision-making process. I started at the beginning by sharing with you that the women who rise, they don't rely on the emotions. They decide who they are and then they act like it. That's where your decision-making process needs to come from. We have to stop making decisions from our emotions. And bear with me when I say that. I don't want you to think, Sabrina, you're asking me to disregard my emotions and to not feel. If you know me, you know that I am the ultimate feeler. So that will never be something that comes out of my mouth. I will never ask you to disassociate yourself like that. What I'm talking about is simply when you recognize that the way in which you want your life to go, the direction you want it to take, the path that you want to go down, the behaviors that you're currently engaging in are leading you further away from that path, further away from that desired outcome. How can you stand in a place of making a decision directed towards that outcome, and whether or not you feel like it in the moment is no longer a part of the decision-making process of whether or not you're going to do the thing in the direction of that outcome? Does that make sense? Your emotions no longer get to be in the driving seat of your life. Bottom line. Yes, feel the things. Feel all the things, especially in the way that our world is right now. It's hard to not be bogged down and not have that kind of weight of negative emotion on you. I get that. You can feel it, but you do not have to hold it. And if you are committed to changing your life in the most extraordinary way, to have the most extraordinary quality of life that you desire, you cannot hold all the you can't. Not when you're coming to the table to get your shit done, basically. Can you carve out 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of your day that are directed and dedicated to the outcomes that you want your life to be, regardless of the emotional state you may be in, and then go back to that emotional state if it serves you? It doesn't often, but if that's what you need to do to get yourself to move, then that's what you need to do. It's something that is kind of how I laid out my workflows for a really long time. I would get up in the morning, I would do the scariest or hardest or the thing that I dislike the most on my to-do list immediately. I have my coffee, do all my things, and then like my affirmations and planning my day and all the feel-good stuff to get me in a good mindset and good juju. Then I would do that one thing that was my least favorite thing to do. Then I would go and work out, and then I would dedicate the next 2-3 hours, however long it was, to where it is that I wanted my life to go, the outcomes that I was driving towards, irrespective of the emotional state I was presenting in that day. And then after those tasks were done, I could go and wallow in the self-pity. I could go and Netflix and chill. I could go and do whatever, because I knew that the direction that I wanted to head into, that had been taken care of. And if that's how you need to set up your workflow for your day, then that's what you need to do, because your emotions can no longer be the CEO of your decision-making in your life. They cannot. They cannot. Decide who you are and then act like it. That's the decision-making protocol that I present to you and that I strongly encourage you take. So that's a very short spiel on decision-making, because I feel like we really hit it at the beginning, and I just wanted to reiterate that. So why you keep starting over and how to become the woman who rises and breaks that cycle. Identity versus behavior. Recognize that your identity is the driving force of everything that is happening in your life, not the behavior. Your behavior mirrors your identity. Number 2, your self-trust, that level of self-trust, how that is connected to how you currently regard yourself, and working on that piece. Like, what is the work that needs to be done to get me on the path in the direction that I want to go? And then your decision making. Decide who you are and then act like it. Your decisions have to come from the place of where you want your life to be ultimately, not from the fester of emotions that you're experiencing currently. Clear? All right. I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you some solid kind of understanding of just how much power we have in this life. This is something that I say to you a lot, and I hope it's not redundant. I hope every time I say it, you kind of hear it and feel it more and more and more. We have so much power in our lives. Remember, what changes your life, either something comes from the outside and forces change, or something comes from within and creates the change. But in both scenarios, you decide. Something can come from the outside and force change, but you decide the change that occurs, or something comes from within and creates the change, because you decided that that was what was necessary. You decide. You have so much power in your life. Stop giving it away to the behaviors that you just push off as if they're not a part of you, that they came from somebody else, or this kind of relationship with yourself that has gotten so muddy and ugly that it feels like something you can't get out from underneath. You can. You have so much power, so much autonomy, so much efficacy in this life. It's up to you to start to use it. Thank you for being here. I so appreciate it. I'll put information about my Inevitable Woman coaching in the comments here, so you can go and check it out if that's something that you want to look at. But again, look for more work on identity if that's an area that you recognize you need help in. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Perhaps consider subscribing to the channel. I would love that. Share with me what you took away from this in the comments, or reach out to me on my social media handles, and I would love to dive a little bit deeper in here with you. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care.